Hey, welcome to part 2, citizens, of our conversation with David Haskell, PhD professor at the Wilfrid Laurier University. We're speaking on diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI. Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? Is it ruining our country? Well, here you go, jumping right back into the conversation.
You know, I want to say for anyone who's watching right now, we want to hear your thoughts. We want to hear what it is you're thinking. There's so much on this. And David and I go really, really intentional about getting into the comments and replying and hearing people's thoughts. We want to hear different perspectives, where you're from, what your experiences. Do you experience this? Are we missing it somewhere? Tell us so we can unpack it.
Or what we're talking about. Yes. Is that pissing you off?
Yes.
Are you getting
really
mad about
want
it?
to know for sure. Because there's so many angles on this. But this is in my opinion, this is a good idea. We're trying to wrestle with a bad idea by showing the good that can come out of talking about it.
Well, what David you've brought in is real empirical evidence to show that this is not a good idea, that it is actually hurting us. And you can look at even examples now. I know even in Canada across universities right now, you've got a lot of different students. And I'm sure DEI is the mindset that has framed these students who are camping out in protest of Israel, Palestine, all that kind of stuff. Because what I'm saying is that they're viewing the world through oppressed and oppressor, through people not being equal, thinking that there is something going on deeper. It is affecting our country through and through and through. You said people are financially incentivized in the opposite. They don't want to lose their jobs.
Right.
So they feel obligated to subscribe to certain ideas, or at least speak to certain ideas. And we even know, as Bill C-63 is being tossed around and the idea of hate speech and all that stuff, we're living in a world where there's a lot of bad ideas that's actually affecting Canada. And we're seeing it in real time now. Because you even mentioned, actually, just to go back, 100 years ago, there's some studies. So this has been around for a long time. Obviously, it's quickened in the last 30 years, and especially in the last probably 15 years. 15 years or so. Why has there all of a sudden been such widespread adoption, do you think, in the last 10, 12, 15 years?
A lot of people looked at this, right, to say, what was the tipping point? What happened? Some people tie it to the presidency's second-term presidency of Obama, that he started to really hammer the race issue, and then it got picked up. Or maybe we just hit the tipping point in the universities finally. Because the universities have been pushing this stuff since the 1980s. Okay. It comes out of law. First of all, you get critical race theory in the law departments, and then it percolates out. And part of the movement of embracing these lies has involved the suppression of empirical evidence. So you can read a lot of textbooks that are found in things like critical race studies, critical gender studies, where they specifically will denigrate things like empirical evidence. They'll say, that is Western knowledge. That is white supremacy. Empirical evidence is white supremacy. Oh, well, how do you feel about white supremacy? Well, we should get rid of it, which is tantamount to saying we should get rid of empirical evidence. Because if you do, then you don't have anything to combat them. So some of them are really clever in knowing we don't want proof. We don't want proof because when you start looking at the data, the statistics, it's really clear they don't have a leg to stand on. It's, in my own study, I quote some pretty funny stuff. Like if you ask HR professionals, who are the people who are responsible for implementing DEI measures, 2/3 say, I'm pretty sure it doesn't do anything good. But
crazy.
So why do they keep doing it? Because their jobs depend on it.
Totally.
Yeah.
So that's the idea of the tipping point. It's not a small snow or a small snowball anymore. It's starting to roll and roll and roll.
Yeah.
You know what I thought of when you said that? We live in an age now, for some people, I'll say for a lot of people, when they have real evidence in front of them, they'll still refuse to believe it, because we become so tribalistic in terms of, I am just going to wave this flag because for whatever reason, those are my people, or this is what I believe, and I'm just going to stick to what I believe in the face of real evidence showing me. And that's something I think we want to continue to promote, is that, like, and you and I have said this openly. If we're not experts, we never will claim to be experts. We're guys that are just trying to wrestle with some of the things that we're all wrestling with. But if we're wrong, I'm at least willing to say, yeah, I got that wrong because I learned A, B, and C, and this helped me change my mind. But if we as citizens aren't willing to do that, we are on a path that we're just going to be screwed in the long run.
And so we have this great idea where the Enlightenment comes around, and the Enlightenment, when it isn't influenced by Christianity, incidentally, becomes as toxic as anything else, because then moral relativism.
Sure.
Is just
exactly.
But this idea, there were good things out of the Enlightenment that said, let's try as best as we can to use empirical evidence. And again, part of that is to reduce tribalism. It's like merit, competency, and evidence.
Yeah.
And then we'll go with the evidence. And for many people today, you just articulated it, David. You said, I want to know what the evidence is, so if I'm wrong, I'll know, right? And that's the rational position to take. To be rational is to say, to hold a rational thought is that I will change the thought with the introduction of new evidence.
Of course.
That's what rational is. But we have a whole generation schooled in our universities who have abandoned rational thought, where they actually do not want both sides of debate to be heard. And they've been told that from their professors. That is antithetical to the empirical evidence. It's antithetical to the Enlightenment tradition. It's antithetical to even Christian tradition, which says, again, going back to love your enemies or treat others as you want to be treated, which means listening to them.
One of the most visual moments in my life where I realized that was true was in the thick of COVID. We were in Manitoba together, and we were all piled in one house during it because that was the only place we had, and so we had to follow the rules, and they were so strict, and Manitoba was next level strict. And December is a big birthday month for our family. And so we go over to Shoppers, and literally this, I don't know if it was like this where you were, but we had caution tape and plastic things around shelves because they had only essential items.
Yeah.
So you couldn't get certain items. So I go to the birthday card section, and it's all taped off. But because it's December, the Christmas cards were allowed.
Right beside each other.
And they're right beside each other. So I did this, move the little caution tape, grabbed a birthday card for my wife, and I brought it to the counter, and I put it on the counter, and we go like this, and the person goes, this is a non-essential item. And I went, this is a card with ink on it that says happy birthday instead of Merry Christmas, and the Christmas is allowed. It's non-essential, sir. And I went, I don't care.
That should frighten you.
And so I stopped, and I made a scene, and I literally went, are we in communist China where I can buy a Christmas card because Big Brother, call it who it's not Big Brother, your God, what it seems like, is telling you that you cannot buy that card because the ink says a different word on the paper, and that one is safe and this one's dangerous. And I literally threw it back on I said, are you going to make me steal this card so I can get my wife a birthday card? And then she goes, well, I'm just doing what my boss says I have to do. And I went, that's the problem.
Right.
You need to push back and say, this is absurd. And if we don't ever take a stand for good ideas or bad ideas, we're going down a very slippery slope. And it was, I left, I didn't buy a thing. I said, don't take everything. I pushed it all on the counter. I said, I will not support this business as long as you have logic like this. This is dangerous.
You know what you just touched on is, first off, we talk about citizens all the time.
Yeah.
Whenever we look at history,
and
oftentimes let's use Nazi Germany, and we talk about what happened, what was the progress in the 30s, and leading into Hitler and Germany doing what they did. And a lot of us as citizens say, I would not have complied. I
never would.
If I was in that position, would I have spoken up? But yet we look at those people, how many of them just let things go by? Mm-hmm. But now you fast forward to COVID, and I'll speak from my own experience. I bet you 40% of the people that I knew in relation, I'm going to take out our community that we have because that was a specific community. But outside of that, through family or acquaintances or friends, I would say 40% of them were eager to actually report on you, to turn on you, and to just do what the government told you to specifically to do. Now we can argue all we want how far overreaching they were, and I'm just talking about the willingness of citizens to just do what they're told to do in the face of whatever it could be. Now apply that situation to where it actually turned in like Nazi Germany. I'm just bringing that to attention because if we're not aware, and we have this tribalistic mindset, and also we'll maybe touch on this, really it's pride at the root of it when you're talking about if you're not willing to change your answer or what you think in the face of real evidence, right? Like
you're not truly pursuing truth.
I'm just saying that's a dangerous place to be as a society, because you're going to go along with it in theory.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anyways,
one of the things that we haven't even talked about, we touched on it a little bit. This notion, there's a divide. At this stage in history, it really is someone of a right wing or a conservative mindset who is more open. Like we are now the champions of free speech. We weren't always, by the way.
Totally.
Right? And there was really a change probably in the 1960s where conservatives, again, I think very much with the Christian influence, they begin to see how does their Christianity work out in society, and they said, well, you know what, free expression is a pretty good thing, and they become like, if you look over the mandates and the COVID thing, most of the leaders were strong men or women of faith. Like you dig into it and you see that they were principled people who.
When you say leaders, you mean people that were leading in a responsible way? What are you saying?
Leading in a responsible way, pushing back against what was conceivably the tyranny that we saw during the mandates during the COVID. Anyway, where I wanted to go with this is that there really is a big divide in the way that life is lived by this two sides of the coin. We've now got those people on the right who are very pro-freedom. They are more, I would say, inclined to rationality. And I'm not just pulling this out of the air. Yeah. So there have been a lot of good studies done. So if you ask people, here's one of the studies that was done related to left and right differences. They got people on the left they told them about a policy. They said there's drone bombing. And they said, here are the consequences of the drone bombing somewhere in the Middle East. If they were told, okay, it's Barack Obama, who is behind this policy, they're like, 100% I'm for it.
Yeah.
If they were told Donald Trump is behind it, that is the worst idea I've ever heard.
Yeah.
So and this was people who were decidedly left. But when you ask people on the right, there was a significant difference. Mm-hmm. They actually said, well, first of all, when they were given the information, there's drone bombing, here's the outcome. They tended more to base their decision on the outcome and not on the person who was responsible for it.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying here is that there really is becoming a divide in the way that we live our lives. And the people on the left are accelerating toward a tribal mentality. Mm-hmm. And this is very different because if you look historically, it's often the people on the right who are more willing to embrace an authoritarian position or an authoritarian leader. And this has been completely ignored. It was almost impossible. Some guys came out of the US who wanted to look at left-wing authoritarianism. And the publishers, the academic publishers, were like, you can't even study this because it doesn't exist. But increasingly, we're seeing that this is a phenomenon on the left and not on the right.
Yeah.
Another thing that is my heart goes out to the people on the left. This is a really terrible mental state to be in. So there's a strong correlation. The stronger you identify as a progressive or on the left, the greater your chance that you are suffering from mental instability. So if you look,
that real?
That's real. So I'm going to give you some stats.
One more time, please.
The stronger you see yourself as a strong progressive, a strong liberal, a strong leftist, the greater your propensity for mental illness. So over 50%, I think it's 54%, women between the ages of 18 and 34 who identify strongly as progressives also have been diagnosed and treated either through psychological therapy or through medication with mental illness.
I can see the comments going off.
Listen, show me your study.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right?
And I want to
That's
look
what I love that you're
I
bringing
read
about
that.
this.
Yeah.
There's evidence that you're...
the studies. And I want to go search on it and look it up and read it myself. And I will after this. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so I'm saying that there's another problem with DEI is that when you buy into it, it can wreck you. Yeah. It can wreck you emotionally. If you think everybody's out to get you, that is really unhealthy.
It's a bad place to be.
There was a study.
It changes your actual, sorry to interrupt, it changes your dynamic also of how you present yourself.
Sure.
If you're walking into a room to do a job interview and you already think that those people have something against me because of the color of my skin that is physiologically going to represent itself in how you conduct yourself. Yeah. Whereas if you don't walk in confident based on your merit, like I know I deserve this job because I'm qualified.
Yeah.
You're going to have a different posture when you walk into that. Mm-hmm. It's crazy how that mentality, I'm 100% buy into that.
And I'll throw it on the other side. So if you want to look at the people on average who possess the greatest mental resiliency, conservative Christians. During the pandemic, for example, Gallup poll did a survey of mental health. The only group that experienced either the same or better mental health were those conservative Christians who continued to attend church in person.
Wow. And there's a study for that.
Yeah. Gallup poll.
Wow. That's incredible.
I believe that. Well,
and that's just one little piece of the puzzle.
Look what you're referring to, what they're rooted in it, right? Yeah. Where their root is found. It's not in self. It's in a higher power, higher authority.
Right.
Yeah, with a value system built in. Absolutely. Yeah.
If you know that if you are loved by God, and this is what conservative Christians believe. They believe that when I give my life to God, I get a path. I know that really I have to trust. There's something really mentally healing about that. There's something really that causes great resilience. It also brings courage, right?
I heard the phrase a lot in my digging into this, that DEI is often referred to as a religion.
Sure.
Oh, it is.
A pseudo.
It's a religion.
Yeah.
Pseudo-religion.
What would make you agree with that?
So a religion has rituals. The rituals of DEI, for example. So in Christianity, there's a confession. If it's the Protestant tradition, you confess to God, perhaps on your knees individually. Yeah. Catholic tradition, you go see your priest. In DEI, what you're doing is you confess publicly to your privilege, right? The original sin of DEI is whiteness, right?
Yeah. So you're saying there's just parallels everywhere.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we are religious beings.
Yeah.
It's not whether you will be religious. Yeah. It's which religion you'll follow.
Yeah, for sure.
Can we jump into equity?
Oh, yeah, geez. Yeah.
We got to diversity, great conversation, but people hear equity and often mistake it for equality.
Right.
I even said earlier in the show, like I believe that all men and women are created equal, right?
Right. But
yet this term equity is thrown out. Thrown out. Can you just?
I got a photo here. Is this a good way to start it? Tell me if this is accurate.
Well,
what are your thoughts?
It's suggesting that through redistribution of the boxes, it's saying through the redistribution of the boxes that everybody gets to see the game. So in that way, that is a lovely thing. And I would say it depends what the boxes are. So
I love that you said that, because when I see this photo, now what camera is looking at this? We'll throw this on maybe full screen. Full screen. Because when I see this photo, there's a part of me that goes, yeah, help the short guy. He's short. Yeah, bring him up. Let him see the game.
What I would say is how to help him is, as a neighbor, if I see someone who needs help
from a
in
community
something,
standpoint,
I'm going to be the one. If I can, everyone in their life needs a helping hand up.
Somewhere.
I've gotten it. I'm giving it. I'll continue to.
Yeah.
I think when that mentality permeates, that's awesome. You have any problems with that?
No, but I'm saying, what are the boxes? If the boxes are the laws of the land,
sure.
I'm saying absolutely.
Wow.
I think the boxes should be equally distributed, right? Nobody.
Do you want to see what the last photo is? Sorry to interrupt you. You see that one? It says capitalism. Pay for your tickets, you freeloaders.
That's funny.
Sorry.
So you're saying government laws.
I'm saying that there is definitely the case to be made that no one should suffer for so, I mean, we got to get theological on this. There are different spheres. This is what the reformers would talk about, that we should take care of people. We should.
Yeah.
And we should be willing to redistribute the blessings that we have to others, right?
Yeah.
When it's a choice. As soon as you, and I mean, this is a huge topic. Yeah. It's connected to DEI, but it's a bit different.
Yeah.
So we can see what happens when the government starts to redistribute. I'll tell you what happens. You get Sweden. What happened in Sweden? Sweden has the lowest levels of charitable giving and volunteering. And why? Because everybody said, oh, the government will do that. Mm-hmm. So what happens when the government fails, goes into free fall, and doesn't have the money?
Yeah, sure.
Then the most vulnerable people will have nothing.
Yeah.
So the ideal system really is to let the government take care of what the government does best in terms of justice issues.
Yeah.
And justice issues relate to the law. And what should the law be? It should be impartial. It should not favor anyone. That's why whenever we see the statue of law, it's blindfolded, right?
Yeah.
Because it's this notion, this Judeo-Christian notion that it's impartial. But once you get into this idea that the government is going to pick winners and pick losers based on their immutable characteristics, that is the road to tribalism. So often these very simple memes, these pictures, it's like, okay, who's not for more boxes for the short kid?
Yeah.
What's the box?
Yes.
What do you...
It's a great point, David.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
So...
diving a little deeper.
Yeah, and it's so... I was at this debate. I wasn't debating. A colleague of mine was debating a guy about DEI. The DEI guy throws up a slide and he says, I want you to see why I support DEI. He says, look at this. Here are the wages, the aggregate wages of women and men university professors. Look at this. The women are about 25% lower than the average wage of a man. He said, I don't know how you can get this unless there's discrimination here. You've got to explain this to me. So people in the audience who don't understand that there are multiple variables, like with this box thing, there are multiple variables, they wouldn't get that they were not being told something really important on that slide. What they weren't being told in that slide about the women professors versus the male professors is across the board, people who are in the hard sciences make more money. If you're a professor in the hard sciences, especially astrophysics, it's a great, because
so natural question out of that is, do women pursue hard sciences typically?
No, not at a rate significantly less, maybe 20/80.
Yeah.
And so most of the women were in arts and humanities.
So the study wasn't even about detailed breakdown of profession in location and wages. It was just blanket men, women.
Yeah. And see, this is how the shell game
very deceiving
is often played. This is how the shell game is often played when you're looking at the DEI professionals who are trying to convince you, look at, there's bigotry here. There's discrimination here. You want to look at what are the boxes, right? Yeah.
That's so great. Just even going deeper, not taking a highlight or a media line or something like that and just taking it as face value. The idea, like one of our last episodes, we did a deep dive into Bill C-63, right? And even the name of Bill C-63 accounts for 2% of what the bill wants to accomplish. It's just, you got to go deeper on it. So back to equity. What's the difference between equity and equality? Because this is the middle part of DEI.
Right.
Is equity bad? Is it good?
Yeah, it is bad.
And before you answer while I'm gone because I really got to use the washroom.
Okay.
Would you say it's this? I hear this a lot when it comes to this question: equality of outcome versus equality of opportunity. So equal opportunity.
That's what it is.
So equity is equal
outcomes. It's a redistribution. So it's robbing somebody to give it to somebody else. It's robbery,
which is the pay gap argument.
Well, the pay gap argument, if we're talking men, women.
This conversation got a lot better. I like it.
Oh, ouch.
But you can talk bad about him. He's not here.
The pay gap says that women only make 80% of what men typically make.
Yeah.
Right? And when you look at that just on the surface, you think, wow.
Of course. No, I don't know anyone in my life that would actually go like, okay, I agree with that. We need that to happen. No, nobody would. Nobody logically would.
Nobody would.
Yeah.
So when you look at, well, why would that be?
Yeah.
You see that women tend to work fewer hours.
Yeah.
They tend to choose not to move into roles that are more demanding because it would make them sacrifice time with their family. Yeah. And when you look at men who make the identical choices to women, they also have the same salary.
Same wages.
Yeah.
Because they're honestly more reasonable. Much more reasonable in their life choices.
Yeah. And if women were paid less than men, they would be the company would be brought before the courts because our laws do not allow discrimination.
Yeah.
And we've got really smart professors with PhDs who contributed this lie.
Yeah.
And they should know better.
Yeah.
And yet, you know, they propagate it because they have an agenda.
I saw a comedian, and the thing I love about comedy is it's often a clean way to show the truth.
Yeah,
it's one of the cleanest ways, because if it wasn't truthful, it wouldn't be funny. We've said that I think on a couple of episodes now, because comedians have their way of just taking a poke at what's very real right now. And one of the guys said, well, if I ever become a CEO of a company, and if women cost less, I'll just fire all the men and I'll just pay all the women.
Of course,
and I can pay 80% of the wages instead of 100%.
If that were true,
if
right?
If it were true,
yeah.
And it's just seems like it's just not. When you look at the comparable data, where it's actually real world situations of hours worked and role held.
Yeah. Claudia Golden is a Harvard professor. She was the first woman to be president of the American Economic something. It was a big deal.
Yeah.
And she made it a major research project to look at the gender wage gap.
Yeah.
And I heard her on a podcast, the Freakonomics podcast, which is another guy who's a world-renowned economist. Anyway, just the bottom line was, she said, yeah, there's no smoking gun. There's no discrimination. It's choices.
Yeah.
Again, but you've got to search this information out.
Yeah.
Because the mainstream media keeps wanting to promote division.
Yeah.
And I'm going to guess, Jeremy, you, David, if you thought that women really were getting paid less for the same job, you'd be at the front of the line protesting.
100%.
I would be too, right?
I got 2 daughters.
I have a daughter who is phenomenal.
Yeah.
She's smart. I want her to be able to do what she wants.
Yeah.
She, funnily enough, she wants to be a mom,
which
I'm also going to encourage, because man, that is the most noble profession I know.
It really is. It absolutely is. It absolutely is.
Yeah, you're right about that. 100%. If that's really the fact based on merit, right? You're not looking at it versus male versus female. I'm looking at it, what are you worth in terms of the skill you bring to the specific job set?
So we covered equity.
Good.
Pretty much. I think we did.
Well, I'm a new man coming back, so I'm revived and ready to
it's
go.
like, I really can't think.
You know when you have to go to the bathroom so bad and nothing else in the world matters at that moment? I hit that moment.
And you're in traffic?
Inclusion.
Let's wrap it up on inclusion here. And there's a lot in this episode, and I want our viewers to take their time, go through it, honestly take notes. I'm going to look at a lot of these studies. So inclusion, this is the last part of DEI.
And to summarize, diversity is not a bad thing.
Inherently.
But when you throw out merit...
I'm going to say this, natural diversity as it occurs.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah,
just natural.
That's a great way to put it.
But just forced diversity is not a good thing.
And equity, pretty self-explanatory.
Equity is not a good thing.
We want equality in terms of equal opportunity.
Sure.
Equity means equal outcomes.
And you know, I don't want people to think I'm heartless. At the level of people who are economically disadvantaged, we're not talking skin color here. I really think that if there is a family that can't afford, they're hardworking, or let's say dad died, right? Dad dies, and now they need help. I think governments should help, or we figure out a system
programs to incentivize.
I think that, but again, that is about trying to help with equal outcomes. It's not at the end of it where you really have to judge by skin color and say we're only going to hire a person of color. But my heart really goes out to kids, for example, who through no fault of their own, they might need assistance. But this might be something. I mean, we're so enmeshed that the government has to take care of it. What if we were able to find a way that church communities could do that again? Because that's what church communities used to do.
Yeah.
So there may be a new way to do it. So I am not opposed to helping the vulnerable. Yeah. I want the vulnerable to be helped. I'm just beginning to wonder, have we given up too much to the state? It really does make us more apathetic in our own charity, our own volunteering. Is there a recalibration that needs to be done in that respect?
It's a great question to ask. For inclusion, would you liken equity to the idea of a crab bucket mentality, meaning, You never listened to this
I've
analogy?
never. Do you go to the beach and you pick crabs out?
No.
You put multiple crabs in a bucket.
Yeah.
It's a
and
wild.
if one crab starts trying to crawl up and getting up, it is natural for the other crabs to pull that one crab that's about to get up and out and pull it out. Because
to backtrack a bit is if you put one crab by itself, it'll always get out, and it's annoying. The best way to keep it from going out is put a second.
Put another crab, and they'll continually pull each other down.
They will never get out.
Equal it out, or is it the other way, where would equity be the fact of you're pulling someone out with you, even though they put no effort into actually getting up and over, or is it both? If you've never heard it before, kind of defeats my analogy of a crab bucket mentality.
So
who wrote that song, Crab Bucket? Remember that from the early 2000s?
No idea. Play it. There it is. I'm just kidding.
Okay, I can either give you an answer or I can talk about crab buckets because I can't get my mind around the crab bucket image.
No, I really want to get into inclusion.
Let's move on.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That was a waste.
I am going to go home and I'm going to YouTube crab bucket because I really want to see this happen.
There's books on it. Jordan Peterson's got talks on it too, I think.
You know what?
There's a lot on it.
I recommend go and watch Jordan Peterson. He probably will explain it better than me in terms of the crab bucket. But on inclusion, so anytime, the shortcut is anytime you hear one of the terms that is used repeatedly by the left, think the opposite. I mean, that has to be the general rule now. They really, when they are talking about inclusion, your mind should immediately go to exclusion. They are not meaning inclusion. Sure. They are meaning we are going to exclude, and it began with we're going to exclude the majority population, right? We're going to demonize white people, and then we're going to exclude white people. Why? So that we can build up others. Justification is, well, the whites didn't get there nobly. The whites didn't get there. They got there through the privilege of their skin. So therefore, we can justify it. But now it extends to anybody who performs beyond the average. So now Asian Canadians and Americans are considered white adjacent. So they can be excluded. So inclusion no longer equals the Asians. Asian
because the word inclusion wouldn't naturally be everybody.
It would be everybody.
Well, it's inclusion by exclusion,
right?
Just like it's just like it's by fixing racism by racism.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's by equality by equity, and then you have inclusion by exclusion. It's all just
that is wild.
By George, I think he's got it. I think that's it.
We got something out of this episode, David.
That's it. And now it is even if you are a black man who articulates a factual, I don't want to call it a conservative position. I don't want to call it a traditional position. Now, because those things I think are now synonymous with factual position. Logical, factual, rational. We talk about rational. Yeah. If you're a black man with a rational position, which would be antithetical to the progressive position, now you're excluded.
Like Thomas Sowell.
Like Roland Fryer, like Wilfred Riley.
Sure.
All these guys, really strong academics who looked at the data, they tell the truth, and then they are excluded.
Yeah.
Wow.
Crazy. So we touch on, DEI is not good.
Okay, that's the clip. That's the viral bit right there. You did it.
2 seconds.
Why didn't you just, we should have said that at the start.
Yeah, I found the song. I want to show you guys.
Is this the Crab Bucket song?
This is the Crab Bucket song. It's by
Is this what you were off at the washroom?
Chaos?
I can't remember.
I
can't remember the order.
I got hit with a 15-second ad.
You don't have premium on there? I can't. My time
premium.
being wasted with ads.
Why do you pay
Let's wait for the
premium?
ad.
Do you remember the song?
In silence.
Trying to get down, but I'm moving up. Crabs up. There you go.
Interesting.
Anyways,
cool.
Little pop culture
That worked
for you.
perfect. Yeah, I know that song, and now I never knew what it was about.
Yeah.
This has been very fruitful for me.
There you go.
Glad you got something out of it.
I did. I got
From
something
being
out
the
of this.
smartest man in the room.
But now that's in doubt. Now that's in doubt, David. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I just have one last question, to be honest. We want to talk a little bit about the financial incentives. Maybe that's the wrong way to put it, but it's backwards. But there's this thing called ESG. I don't want to define it, but that's governance for companies that basically have to abide by DEI principles. If they're not, in theory, they're penalized. And an example of someone who's gone against that is Elon Musk with Tesla. And when he's actually filed with the Exchange and Commission, Security and Exchange Commission, he actually did away with all of the DEI requirements that should be in Tesla. Right. I think he was slightly punished for it, but obviously they're still around. Why is there such widespread adoption of this DEI now in financial companies? Do you know much about that?
Yeah, well, so when we use the word ESG, we can still be using DEI.
Yeah.
And the brilliance
ESG stands for?
Environmental, social governance.
Yeah. So they just want to keep repackaging the progressive idea. The critical social justice gets repackaged as anti-racism, as DEI, as ESG, because they want it to be everywhere. And the reason that I think companies gravitate to this is if you can do something that suggests you're virtuous, people won't look at the corruption. So if you look at when the companies really start moving this direction, and there are other factors too, but one of the main factors is, you guys might recall when there was the Occupy Wall Street movement.
Yep.
And the Occupy Wall Street movement was really a very significant protest movement against the corruption that you see in corporate America. It dealt with the cronyism of corporate America, where they would really enrich each other. They would let the pension plans of middle Americans just falter, and then they'd sell off the company and make the people at the top were making billions and billions and billions, and people at the bottom, the workers, they'd lose their pensions, etc. And then we saw that really around 2008. Again, lots of people lost their pensions when there was that economic meltdown, but the banks that were responsible, they were bailed out. Not the people, but the banks. At the level of corporate America and the elites, they needed some way to shelter themselves. They needed some way to divert attention from the significant corruption that they're imbibing. And they said, hey, if we just really focus on this DEI stuff, look how noble we are. Look how virtuous we are. We are totally anti-racism. We're so anti-racism, we're going to be racist about it.
Yeah.
And it's a trick. It's a magician's trick.
Virtue signaling at its finest.
Look over here.
Sure.
But don't look over here.
Yeah.
Look over here. Don't look over here. And it's worked marvelously. Because now, why is it the case that the NDP and the socialists, the communists, they're all backing corporate America now? Why is that?
Yeah.
It's because, well, first of all, they shouldn't. They should. Their mandate used to be the common person.
Yeah.
They've rejected that completely because they prefer the tribalism of DEI. And corporate America is like, great. Listen, if I can throw you these few scraps and you're going to be on my team and stop protesting me, I'm on.
And the way to break it down is, like, for environmental social, is that they have to hit certain environmental standards. What are you doing to combat climate change? If you aren't doing enough, penalty. Social is basically a way of, you should have 4 out of 10 people on your board need to be people of color, BIPOC, right? I believe is a term they use, right? It's indigenous, I forget how, but
black indigenous, people of color.
So that type of thing, like mandated, again, not based on merit, but based on your skin color. So they have all these recognitions of, you need to hit these standards. If not, you're financially going to be penalized, or we won't borrow to you, or you won't have all these type of things, which will, obviously that's companies' worst nightmares. And the Fortune 500 companies, largest 500 in the world, I think like 99% of them go by this too. So
I had a friend who was a part of a charity, and in order to get, this is in Canada, in Calgary, in order to get Summers Jobs funding, he had to sign a DEI statement. Yeah. And it went against what he personally believed, so he didn't sign it and missed out on the funding, which stopped stopped the growth of what they were doing. And he missed out on a lot of funding because he was going, I have to violate my principles on what this thing read about, which he goes, I'm a man of principle. Yeah, I'm not just going to do that for a little bit of money. Like, there's no way there. And so he tried to fight this, and he didn't know how, and he didn't know what to do, and it just seemed like I couldn't believe it. I was floored. It is everywhere. Yeah. So lawyers in Ontario, probably lawyers in other provinces, there was a bit of pushback on this one. They had to, in order to practice law, you had to create this statement of principles, which was
was essentially a DEI statement.
Yeah.
Now, there was a concerted group of lawyers who pushed back and said, you can't compel this. You can't compel my beliefs. But so they staved it off, but the movement is still on the other, the guys, the bad guys, I'm going to call them bad guys. They're still around and they're trying to push for that. If you want research grants now at any university, you have to do a DEI statement. It really is. But at their heart, it is about power, right?
Yeah, that's wild. If it's about a research grant, which is to research something and move an idea forward or look into it, what in the world? I don't care about your ideology at all.
Yeah.
If you're already a practicing professor or someone who's in the field who's been approved for your ideologies already, like you're obviously in their faculty. So why are we doing a DEI statement based on their research? Let them do their profession.
Because it really is about weeding people out. We want to make sure that we've got the right people. This is a system that we keep talking about tribal. We know that their tribe hates the others, right?
Wow.
And they want to make sure that their tribe is in power. And we got used to the idea of tolerance, that very Christian notion that we will treat others as we want to be treated. And we're living off the fumes of Christianity now. Christianity now in Canada is a minority religion, right? Our latest stats on that are that it's a minority religion.
Yeah.
And as Christianity decreases, you're going to see an increase in this other faith. And this other faith is really nasty and really intolerant, and it's going to make you do what it wants you to do.
And if we look at history, right, this is maybe the first time this terms of DEI has come out, but maybe you can call it neo-Marxism, that type of idea. We look through history of countries that have subscribed to these types of things. Where did they end up? How did they end up?
Toilet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so in the notion of what we've asked this question a lot, if we keep heading down the path that we are on as the country of Canada, what country are we leaving behind for our kids? Is that this is something you have to be so aware of in order to be able to, first of all, identify and be aware of what ideas are permeating our culture that are really bad. Where are you going? You're bringing our Titanic thing?
Nice.
We brought this on.
And this is where iceberg. That's Canada. These are bad ideas.
So, and this idea of DEI is that, like, for me, in the future of our kids and our family, and whether or not you are per se a Christian or not, you cannot deny that the principles and values of what's made Canada great, what's made the U.S. great, and others, was founded upon the principles that are those Judeo-Christian foundations, right?
Yeah,
and this new religion is really doing away with those core principles of what holds our democracy, our country together.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are waking up to that.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Because, well, I look at people like Russell Brand. I don't know if, so Russell Brand, big YouTube personality, former movie star and comedian, just got baptized, became a Christian. Hersey Ali, Ayan Hersey Ali, just became a Christian. Her husband, Neil Ferguson, also, he's saying, well, he doesn't call himself a Christian. He says, I'm a lapsed atheist.
Yeah.
We've got Richard Dawkins, who just in the last month said, I'm a cultural Christian. This is the guy who was the head.
Really?
Wow. Yeah.
I didn't hear that.
Yeah. And the interviewer said, well, what do you mean? And he says, I've seen the other side.
Totally.
And
by cultural, he's saying he's seen the principles that comes from Christianity work in our society.
Yeah. But it's pretty much like saying, I really like apple pie, but I hate apple orchards. You can't have one without the other. Yeah. It's a little bit hypocritical in that way. But people are beginning to see in real time what happens when the Judeo-Christian values that our society were founded on are then pushed to the fringe. And I'll give the example I often use now is that it's probably been since about the 1960s that Judeo-Christian values were pushed out of the public sphere. And it has a lot to do with a movement called fusionism, which combined classical liberalism or libertarians with conservatives. The conservatives were the religious guys, the Christian conservatives. And it was, hey, for our public face, we're just going to be classical liberal. We're going to not talk about religion. Yeah. Well, what that really was, what you don't talk about in public doesn't get honored in private either for long. It's a lot harder. And in just those, let's say, 60 years since we've pushed Christianity, Christian values to the fringe, in just those 60 years, we've lost the ability to even say that women exist in reality.
Yeah.
Like that's how far we've come. And people look at that. People look at that and they say, how do we get back? And we don't get back by being classical liberal again.
Yeah.
We get back by being faithful to Christian values again.
Very, very
interesting.
You know, that's a good way to wrap up such a huge topic, in my opinion. But
I think so.
This has been wild. I appreciate you, David, coming on and helping.
It was
us,
a blast. It was great.
Unpack something as deep as this. And I'm definitely going to go back and look at a lot of your responses and these things. And I encourage anyone watching to do the same. I hope you guys can share it, like it, follow for sure, because we need to get these types of thoughts out. Like that's the whole idea of why we do what we do, is we want to wrestle with ideas that are difficult, good ideas versus bad ideas, and hopefully good ideas win.
Well, and you brought a lot of clarity as well, and empirical evidence to support the claims, not just loose opinions or even informed opinions. It's great that, so to put you on the spot, will you accept our invite to come back and talk with us one day? Think it through. Take it through.
You've got good snacks. I'll be back.
We got something good going on here. Hey, thank you guys for hanging with us, watching. Remember, follow us on, what are we on? Twitter, Rumble,
YouTube,
Facebook,
Instagram,
TikTok, all that jazz at Real Citizen. Love to hear what you guys think. If you loved what we said, if you hated it, if there's things we got wrong, let us know. Ask questions, things you want us to follow up on that we can get back to you. We got David's our friend, so we can ask him more questions and put out stuff. But let us know. Appreciate y'all. Anything else?
Just a salute.
Do your salute.
That's beautiful.
There we go.
Seeking truth and knowledge.